2026 is supposed to be the biggest year of RuneScape going forward. It's going to be the first year that microtransactions will not be present in the form of gambling in the game as well, and the moderators and the CEO himself have put their money where their mouth is by taking out the biggest profitable system in their video game yet. We're going to be making predictions of what we think 2026 is going to look like ahead of the official roadmap that releases on January 19th. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you're new here, my name is Edimus. We cover all things RuneScape here as well as stream, as you can tell, but a beautiful chat here. If you want to drop by for any live streams, be sure to check all the links down below. Going into these beautiful predictions, I have the full thought that we're going to be going into a number of things. There's a lot of head hurters that RuneScape players have, as well as myself, but overall, I feel like RuneScape is a fantastic game that has a lot of problems that could be fixed with a little bit of polish and love. If for the background noise of what you guys are seeing right here, I'm just currently doing some thieving, working on collecting some materials so that we can continue playing the video game. Now, first things first, a big thing that RuneScape has been pushing towards, especially the J-mods, they have been pushing towards a lot of integral updates and trying to fix what the game has problems with. In my opinion, I think the biggest head hurter in this game is definitely the early to entering the mid game. The content that you have from the early to mid game is rather, it's very open and it's not necessarily linear unless you pick necromancy being your combat style. Necromancy is a streamlined combat style and overall skill in the game that has a built-in gear progression guide and skill ability progression guide. Additionally to that, it is a very simplified combat style. It's something that is made to get people who start the game to be able to reach mid and end game content. But the problem with that is that RuneScape has 4 combat styles, and those 4 combat styles are range, melee, mage, and necromancy. Range, melee, and mage have a very big problem where they are completely unbalanced in the early game, and a lot of their things aren't necessarily nearly as strong or as easy to understand as necromancy is. Necromancy is definitely the more optimized combat style. It is pushed at the very early levels, as well as a fully fleshed out gear progression guide. For the other combat styles of range, magic, and melee, Jagex is wanting to bring the original combat triangle more in line with recent styles like necromancy. Necromancy offers a really good beginner feel to combat and can be forgiving while learning the intricate tick system that RuneScape is known for. They have a more convoluted progression path, and I think that Jagex wants to get all of these combat styles in the same level of polish and early game and mid game usability, just like how necromancy is. I expect to see some level of combat refresh or combat rebalance throughout 2026 in response to the combat beta that is currently going live, so that players can have an idea and have a much better time not being forced into using one combat style when the whole identity of RuneScape should be to be able to do whatever you'd like in whatever way you'd like. It's one of the greatest strengths of the game, in my opinion, and I think that'd be fantastic. Leading into the integrity portion of the game, where a lot of the visuals that you see within the video game are pretty difficult. The RuneScape is a very old video game, 25 years old, and that it has gone through many of hands. There's been a lot of developers that have touched this video game that have a different design philosophy for how they want the video game to look. It has become a very cluttered mess with a lot of different graphic styles. I think we're going to end up seeing a big graphical cleanup that was announced earlier last year, as well as a core thing coming into the video game. I'm a big supporter of this. I think RuneScape is a very pretty game with a lot of different shades of makeup. There's a lot of different areas that, like, if the whole game was made that looked like this, it probably would look good. There's a whole lot of areas that look very good that just look out of place because they look so good. It's very, very odd, and you can definitely see the pipeline as you're leveling your account and as you're going to different areas throughout the world where they have not touched other things. For example, inside of Ardoin, there is a beautiful area. You have the player-owned farm. It's very nice, polished, sits perfectly in where it needs to be in the center of the map. Close nearby is the fishing guild, and between the fishing guild and the player-owned farm is this tunnel. For this tunnel, you go inside there for a quest, and you go inside, and it's immediately like you got transported back to 2010. It does not look good. It is a very ugly looking area in comparison to the outside world that is fully updated. I think we're going to see a big graphical overhaul as we go through the game, and to support this, Jagex recently updated their user and equipment systems requirements for the video game to support engine updates. For the visual integrity of the video game as well, I think that RuneScape is going to be working towards a little bit of visual clarity. And when I say visual clarity, I'm talking like when you are doing an activity and cleaning up some of the particle effects and special effects that your spells abilities are giving off. A lot of times when you're doing group PVM or even solo PVM, there are so many effects going on the target that you're hitting, it can be kind of hard to tell what you're looking at. RuneScape is a fantastic video game to play. It is kind of a hard video game to watch. That's not unique to RuneScape itself. A lot of MMOs have this thing called particle bloat or effect bloat, where you have an excessive amount of particles flying around the screen and you can never know exactly what's going on. But one of the strengths of the game that it used to have was extreme visual recognition. It was very, very easy to just kind of watch somebody do something and know exactly what they're doing. And I think that Jagex wants to go back to that. I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit quality of life changes that go into cleaning up a good visual look for the video game when it comes to your abilities and the overall effects. I think this could also play into the like all of the effects on your character, to include bloom and to include particle and trail effects that come with like your walks, auras, capes, stuff like that. Bring it down a little bit and not make it as overwhelming to see. Something I'm really hoping to see next year has to be the most important one on this list thus far, and that is the update to the Grand Exchange. I really hope that they announce, and part of the integrity updates to kind of make RuneScape a more streamlined and polished video game is to update the Grand Exchange. There are a lot of players that play still as a main account, which is pretty much an unrestricted account that are allowed to trade with other players, and the Grand Exchange is your main hub and your main market. It has a number of items in there that you will use and buy on a regular basis, but the biggest problem with the Grand Exchange is that it does not provide an accurate price. There are thousands of items that have completely inaccurate pricings when you're buying or selling, and that can be a huge impact to a daily player's day-to-day experiences, especially as somebody who has gotten into boss killing. It is very frustrating to get a big drop that is worth about 100 million gold, and then all of a sudden you chuck it into the Grand Exchange and it won't sell for 50 million gold. If I was a brand new account who was trying to level up and get new gear and I saw that I got a 100 mil gold item, I would be ecstatic because that is a huge upgrade. To try and sell it into the Grand Exchange and it won't even sell for half of the listed price, that would be devastating to me and a true quit moment. I would love to see that updated, just also to have an accurate price of how much items are in a day-to-day. This doesn't necessarily have to be like the 100% accurate. It could be actively last traded, actively traded, last five items traded, or it could simply be accurate when you're looking at the average prices inside the Grand Exchange. I think the Grand Exchange is a fantastic tool, but it definitely needs a little bit of love so it could be relevant in your day-to-day RuneScape play. Currently, the way the player base has accurate pricing is based off of third-party systems called LE.GG. There's a giant self-reporting merchant website where players will list their actively traded priced items. The problem with LE, though, is that if you have somebody who is actively hoarding a bunch of items, they may list prices that are fake, listing a alt account and a different account as actively trading this price, tanking or inflating a price artificially for their own benefit. To completely remove the aspect of inflating the market with false prices, having an accurate Grand Exchange price would fix this entirely. I would wholeheartedly support a accurate Grand Exchange price. The Aura system is one of the most controversial systems inside of RuneScape. The Aura system currently is a pivotal and gigantic crutch system that is used in every aspect of the game, primarily combat and skilling. Currently, the only way to earn auras is through bonds, through microtransactions, or through loyalty points, which are earned through your subscription being consecutive, or from getting marks of war through PVM. Auras have always been a big pain point because of the way that they're earned, as well as how integral they are needed for certain methods for skilling or for certain methods for combat. Especially during the introduction of combat achievements, auras are pivotal for being able to get those speed times, and that can be a very, very frustrating thing when your aura is off cooldown or when you're unable to use it. I believe the aura system is going to have to get scrapped or at least reworked, and there's a small hint that this could be the upgoing thing with the current combat beta that is going on. Currently, Jagex is thinking of moving all of the combat styles up to 120, leveling them out to necromancy, which is currently the only combat style that is up to 120. And in addition to that, they removed all of the combat damaging auras inside of the combat beta because they are going to be raising and speculating they're trying to raise all of the combat styles up to 120. I think it'd be fantastic to get these combat styles up to 120 and remove the need for combat auras and just introduce the auras that were there either as leveling benefits or either as aspects in a unique way. I am a big fan of how aspects are introduced to the game because I think they're just nice 12-minute buffs that go along with your playstyle, but I think there is a huge problem where auras are really necessary for a lot of activities. I think it'd be a fantastic way to kind of remove that. That way, you're not locked to an hour of playtime where you feel like you only have an hour to do things. There is a weird feeling like when you're looking at your aura timer that like you have to do this thing because you only have it for this hour. I think if you remove those bits, it makes playing RuneScape more flawless and seamless. It'll feel better to have either a really long session or a nice short session without having to worry about your aura timers. I would really hope to see some kind of rework or a mention of what they plan to do with those in the future, and I hope to see it on, and I really hope to see it on the 2026 roadmap. Hell yeah, dude. Auras should be passives. You can unlock either like statues and metaphor. Yeah, I thought about that too, dude. That's exactly. I'd say do something with the hourly thing, but most people otherwise have tons of resets and marks to buy them. But lots of people got that, but you gotta think about like people who don't have a bunch of shit. Auras are so crutch. You really need them. If they're really pivotal, you need to have auras. It is a huge pain in the butt when you don't have them. New players are a very important metric to any video game, and RuneScape is not an exception. RuneScape has been a very steady around 25,000 or 30,000 active players for the last 5 or 6 months, and that has been fantastic. It's actually on the up. But to keep and get new players into the game, RuneScape has gone through many different kind of beginnings. They've had different tutorial islands, different beginner areas, and different ways to introduce and onboard players into the game. I think going into 2026, especially part of the integrity roadmap, we're going to be seeing a ton of new player-focused updates that are going to be making sure that new players coming into the game are not overwhelmed, are not lost, and have an easy way to slowly gain more knowledge and also be able to figure out how to play RuneScape naturally, as opposed to relying on YouTube videos, guides, or a lot of other external factors to be able to get into the game. As long as you can make joining into RuneScape less frictionless, that is something that is going to be super important to get new players into the game. I think a lot of people are willing to try RuneScape, but it is the onboarding and the UI and the user experience when you first come into the game is such a hard time that it can be overwhelming. I myself have introduced a lot of my friends to this video game, and that is a very common problem when it comes to the UI, it being a little bit convoluted and very overwhelming with a bunch of information being thrown at you, as well as just trying to figure out how the hell do you walk around, how do you get to this place, and how do you do these things. These questions should be natural to be able to be figured out inside the video game, but RuneScape is infamous for having a very rough onboarding process. I would love to be able to see more players, new players, filling up the area, but it can be kind of difficult to kind of convince them to play the game when you know that you're going to be going through a tremendous amount of hoops to figure out how do you close the inventory interface. I think going into 2026, it'd be imperative for Jagex to show and redo a lot of the new player experience, and they slowly have. Currently, new players will spawn in Lumbridge, a very original spot for where the game used to have players coming into. They will no longer spawn in the city of Burthorpe and will now spawn in the city of Lumbridge, which has been redone to be more beginner friendly and the iconic and nostalgic beginning of any RuneScape character made 20 years ago. Lastly, something I would love to see myself is I'm really hoping to see some more bosses added into the game that are group bosses. I think going into the group bosses in RuneScape is fantastic, as well as one of the core things that make MMOs. I would love to see going into 2026 a lot more group content that is central to promoting people being together. They recently did it with the 120 thieving update with Heist, where you can see players in the same area that you're doing, however you are doing your own stuff. They coined it solo together, where you're pretty much in the same space, but you're doing your own thing. I personally love that a lot. We're doing it right now. I got homeboy over here thieving, running through a little Albert Einstein's pockets, but we just here coexisting. Love to see it. That's one of my favorite things about this video game, where I don't have to interact with you, but I do want to see you. It's kind of like just co-mingling, bro. Like, I know you there, Don't talk to me, but I know you're there. Like, I love that. That's one of my favorite things about video games, and I would love to see that more going forward in the future. Additionally, though, if we're going to be doing group content, you have to talk about the grouping system. Jagex's grouping system for RuneScape 3 is abysmal. It is very convoluted. It doesn't make any sense. It's not usable. There's no roles you can set for what you want to see for your parameters for your group. There's no way to adjust it. There's no way to properly communicate. It is a huge pain in the butt. I want to see a grouping system remake or grouping system overhaul to make grouping inside the game much better. Currently, the way that people make groups for this video game are currently all through Discords. As fun as Discord is and how wonderful it is to use Discord, it is a huge pain in the butt to try and figure out what PVM spaces you have to get into for whatever content you're going to be doing. For myself, I have figured out a good chunk of ways to get those wins. A big recommendation is like the PVME or like, for example, the Amaska Discord. Fantastic little grouping places, but I would love to be able to get groups up for content and do group content with people inside of the game through a naturally introduced grouping system. I would love to see roles introduced for that, and I think that getting a grouping system, especially focused on the early to mid game, will be fantastic, because currently RuneScape has no grouping system or group content really for the beginning to mid game. They recently introduced the Fletch Hatcher Menagerie, or whatever it's called, who is a solo together boss as well, and I think that's a great direction going forward, but I want to see this grouping system overhauled so it can be actually useful for 2026 updates. Those are all of my predictions going into 2026. I would love to hear what your thoughts are, what you'd like to see going into the new year, and what we hopefully see on January 19th. I think that it's going to be a really big year for RuneScape, especially with the removal of microtransactions and Treasure Hunter. I think that the game is going to have a much better feel and overall a stronger experience for everybody playing the game. If you haven't tried out RuneScape, I would actually highly recommend picking it up right now. And if you're a returning player thinking about jumping right back in, why not, man? I don't think you got anything to lose, to be honest. Giving the game a shot. Try it for a week, try it for a month. I don't care. Just give it a shot. Thank you so much for stopping by. My name is Moose. Be sure to subscribe, like, all that YouTube jazz. Come join the live streams, because I enjoy your company. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace!